everyone, it is time for the study design unit test. So here it goes. So we've got kind of a random number generated list, if you kind of remember that concept. And we're numbering the books from 1 to 70. And notice that they say 0, 1 to 70, and that's because you always have to have a consistent number of digits. So if you're going to go up to a 2-digit number, you have to write your single-digit numbers as a 2-digit number. Anyways, we want to find the first 5 books and the first unique 5 books. So we can't have any repeats. That's kind of implied by simple random sample. In a simple random sample or in any sample, you shouldn't use the same data point twice. So anyways, let's see what happens here. The first book we have is book 27. And then we have book number 78, but wait a minute, 78 isn't in our list, and so we actually just skip over this entirely. So then we look to 88, and we're going to skip that as well. So far we just have 27, and then we also have 57. So far we're down to C and D. Let's keep moving on. 89, again, is not in our list. 41 is in our list. Then we have 59 and 27. Oh wait, but watch this. 27 was the first number in our list, so we have to skip over that as well. So the idea is you always go in 2-digit cycles, and if you don't use that digit, make sure, or I guess in other words, when you skip over this initial 78, make sure you skip over all of this and move on to 88. When those two get thrown out, move on to 57. So you always choose things in pairs of 2 or skip over things in pairs of 2. And make sure to watch out for repeats like we had here with 27 possibly being twice. So the answer is C. All right. So let's hear a large company surveys 100 employees by taking a random sample of 10 managers and 90 non-managerial employees. What type of sample is this? And so one idea here is it's definitely not simple random sample, because what's implied in the wording here is that you decided deliberately to randomly sample 10 managers and 90 non-managers. A simple random sample doesn't specify it like this. In other words, this 10 and 90 ratio comes out from the randomness. So from there, it looks like this would be a stratified sample, where if you think about any work environment, there's definitely more non-manager staff than there are manager staff. If you have a part-time job, you probably definitely realize that. So they're just trying to get a strata, 10% managers, 90% non-managers, something like that. A cluster would be if they grabbed everyone in one location. So if a large company surveys 100 employees all from their store in so-and-so city, that would be a cluster sample. All right, up next. For which population is 80% a legitimate estimate of the percent of employees who like the new slogan? In other words, this question deals with who is this sample generalizable to? And we can only generalize a result from a sample to the characteristics of the sample. So here's what I mean by that. Some members of the marketing team are eating together at the picnic, so evidently there's a optional company picnic. That's kind of a key phrase there. So we're at an optional company picnic, and we're looking at the marketing team at that optional picnic, sharing their thoughts on the new slogan, and they find that 80% like the new slogan. Well, the idea is the only people we can generalize to are all of the marketing team at the picnic. Because the idea is if you're at an optional picnic, you probably care more than the standard employee. I mean, think about how many optional things there are in school and how many things you do. If you're the person who does them, you're definitely in probably the minority. And so you probably have more opinions about the company than others. So the idea is we can only generalize to all members at the marketing team at the picnic. All right. Employees at a video streaming website suspect that users on desktop computers spend more time on their website than users on mobile devices. They plan on taking a large random sample of users to see if their suspicion is correct. What type of study is this, and what type And what is the explanatory variable? This is going to be an observational study because notice they're not saying that they're going to change something about the website or they're going to modify something and see what happens. They're simply saying they're going to just sample things that have already occurred and things that are happening without their correction or oversight or modification. So it's an observational study, and the explanatory variable is going to be the type of device. In other words, what they're doing is they're trying to see if what type of platform they use dictates the time. So whether you're on a desktop or a mobile device will dictate the time you spend. So the time is actually the response variable, and we expect what they're watching on to be the explanatory variable. Alright, administrators at Riverview High surveyed a random sample of 100 of their seniors, identify the population and sample in this setting. And we're trying to see how seniors feel about the lunch offering at school. The idea is we only sampled seniors, so the population is only the high school seniors at Riverview High, because again, you can only generalize or you can only consider your population to be those that have characteristics of your sample. So in other words, because we only sampled seniors at Riverview High, we can't make any other assumptions about other grade levels or any other high school in the district. So this would be the correct answer. Population is only the seniors or all seniors at Riverview High, and the sample is just those 100 particular seniors surveyed. Up next, an insurance company wants to study whether offering incentives for preventative care reduces overall healthcare costs. They randomly sample 200 of their customers. Half of the smokers are randomly assigned to be offered the incentives, and the other half are assigned the control group. The same method is for non-smokers, and half of them get the treatment and half don't. And this is a experimental design using a randomized block. In other words, what blocking does is it takes one of the characteristics of your group and decides to split the treatment between that characteristic. So in this case, the characteristic is who smokes and who doesn't. That is not a treatment. A treatment is what you do to change their behavior. So what you're doing is you're providing different incentives. That is the treatment here. Whether you smoke or not is like a pre-existing characteristic that you don't have control over. So you're blocking by that characteristic, and you're still equally signing that a treatment. In other words, half and half of the smokers, half and half of the non-smokers. So that's what a block design does. All right, up next, what bias do we have here? So there's a lot of words here. Let me read this. Okay, so the idea is that with initial polling, they thought Alfred Landon, who clearly was not the president, because you might know the name Roosevelt, they suspected Alfred would win. And the idea is they only polled people from telephone and car registration records. And if you look at this date here, this is kind of right after the Great Depression. I know this takes some foresight, but in general, you should think that for that time, if you had a phone or a car, you were probably in the upper middle class or the upper class. So they kind of allude to that here. So there were a lot of people who didn't have those luxuries. And the idea is what they did was they undercovered. They did not properly sample a slice of all of the US. If you only sample the upper class, you're probably missing a lot of the majority of the US citizens. That's called undercoverage. All right. Again, a lot of words here. Let me read this for a quick second, and then I'll guide you through it. Okay, the idea here is maybe you can read through double-spaced papers faster than single-spaced, and so the idea is they only sampled their teacher. This is a key that actually when I did this assignment before, the first time, I actually got a lot of these wrong, so this is definitely my weakest area. There's a lot of nuance in the Khan Academies. Hopefully and usually in the AP exam, if you end up having an FRQ about study design, they're not this nuanced. But anyways, the idea is they're only submitting their papers or those students' papers to one of their teachers and seeing if they can grade the double-spaced or single-spaced classes. And the problem here is that they then conclude that any teacher can grade and return papers faster if they're double-spaced. And the idea is the study was an experiment, but it didn't include anyone other than their teacher. In other words, their sample was one teacher, and if you only sample one teacher, you can't generalize to any teacher. There's a similar question that I saw about golf, and the idea in that question was they only did the experiment using professional golfers, and in that case, you can't conclude the result of a professional golfer would go for any golfer. So again, it's a really tricky wording here. It's that their teacher and any teacher. So if your sample only includes one teacher, you can't generalize to all teachers. Same thing, even if they generalized to all their teachers in their high school, technically they couldn't generalize to any teacher because that's not a proper sample. And last but not least, finally, I'm not getting a bunch of stuff wrong here. Surgeon developed a new procedure for knee replacement surgery. To study the effectiveness, they recruit patients who need knee replacement surgery and are willing to participate in the blind study. Randomly assign each volunteer to receive either a new procedure or the standard. After the surgeon performs the procedure, they monitor each patient to see if one group has better results than the other. What does it mean for the experiment to be blind? So actually, we didn't have to read any of this for this question, but oh well. In a blind experiment, it means that the volunteers, or the people who have the treatment applied, don't know what they're receiving. A double blind means the volunteers and the person giving the treatment are unaware. All right, so there we go. Hopefully that helps. Good luck.